Ready?
Yeah,
I am Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Taste of Cherry. Oh, we didn't even decide on a next movie to watch.
We didn't even say on next week's
No,
movie.
shit. Here, let's do that
I don't
again.
know. What do you want to watch?
I would prefer to watch a movie I've never seen before. And I think I know what guy I would like to see.
Okay.
God damn it. Here, let's see. I think I want to see a. I want to see. I think I want to watch a Bresson movie.
Spell that.
Robert Bresson.
Oh, okay. I know who we're talking about. Like A Man Escaped and stuff.
Yeah, I've only seen Pickpocket,
You've only seen Pickpocket?
and he sounds pretty good right now.
Yeah, that sounds great. Let's see. Have you seen, well, I guess you
No,
haven't.
no, I haven't.
Hazard Balthazar?
No,
That can't be how I pronounce that. Do you want to see that? I haven't seen this one either.
we should make it a double feature.
Ooh, okay. I'm listening.
We should watch maybe like a loose double feature of because we went and saw EO
Okay.
Kosminski movie,
Yeah.
his newest one. We saw that in theaters. It was a very popular showing, and it was a very good, interesting movie. And I think that movie is kind of similar in that they both feature a donkey, but I think in other ways as well.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down with a little double. It's been a while since we've done a double feature. He's pretty easy to find.
I don't know. I think I don't know. I liked EO, and there's a lot about it to talk, and it's on Criterion.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. I will okay. I'll cut all this out and then I'll just start from after the thing.
Yeah, let's just yeah, we're yeah, let's just do the intro again.
Well, we don't have to do the intro again. That's the magic of editing. I just have to say the
Oh,
before
okay,
we get
whatever.
started.
All right, whatever.
Okay, let me pull up the watch list so I actually know what movie. Before we get started this week, next week we're going to be watching a double feature. We're going to be watching Robert Bresson's. I feel like there's no way I can say this right. Ah, Hasard Balthazar. Ah, Hasard
Hmm.
Balthazar. That's
Hmm.
probably close enough. And we are pairing that with EO, which is a film we talked about on the podcast. I mean, it's been a while now. When did you see that? Like back in March?
Maybe like March or April or
Maybe.
something like that. Yeah, saw it in the theaters.
I'm excited. I'm glad I haven't watched it.
They're just both similar.
They got donkeys.
They both have donkeys in them, and but I think they all are also like similar in their structure. I think both movies follow the donkey as it goes on an adventure.
Sure. That sounds like fun. I'm pumped. I'm ready. I like Brisson. Brisson's great. So, all right. So this week we're talking about The Taste of Cherry, which is a film about suicide. So for anyone listening who is having troubles in that area, please go seek a medical professional and all of that mental health stuff. I will put a link in below to the suicide hotline and all of that. But Andrew, you've seen this movie before, haven't you?
Yeah, I think I saw it like a year ago or something like that.
How was your second experience?
Yeah, I mean, I still love it. I still think I still think it's a near perfect movie, if not perfect. I think Kiarostami is Abbas Kiarostami, the director. I think he I think he rightly I think he rightly deserves to bestow the title of a master, a filmmaking master.
Yeah.
I can't really think of too many people that I would give that distinction to personally. Maybe like Kubrick. I mean, I don't know. I can't really think of very many others, honestly. I can only think of Kubrick at the moment, but I'm sure there's like a few others. But I would also say Kiarostami, like after watching more of his movies for the first time in the past like couple weeks or so, like I think I think that it's clear, that he is operate operating at a higher brain level than most people are. And Taste of Cherry is, I would say, like of what I've seen, his most condensed feature film. It's free from a lot of stuff. I think it's his most simple, straightforward movie. So I think in that way, I think it's probably his best film.
Yeah, I've only seen a couple of his films, Certified Copy, Close Up, and now Taste of Cherry. And of his work that I've seen, a lot of it, especially this film, is deceptively simple. He's not a man who adores these extremely complicated film setups or is first and foremost concerned with mise en scène, especially with the taste of cherry. I mean, this whole film basically takes place in one car. He goes to a
And
couple
a
of different
lot.
locations.
I've seen more of his movies too around this time. He's obsessed with like cars and like driving around. He loves that idea of like, especially with these movies that he films in the Iranian like kind of countryside, not in the city, but the countryside. He's obsessed with like dudes like driving around like in the Iranian countryside and like just like running into people.
Yeah, there's something poetic, if you will, about this idea of simultaneously constantly moving. So the scenery is always changing, and yet you're always sitting in one place. And in this film, you're just sort of driving in circles, right? Really, all he does is kind of drive
He goes back
around,
and forth a lot. Yeah.
and he just
There
goes
there are
back and
other
forth.
movies. There are other movies where well, I guess like there are other movies that I've seen by him where it really is all about like going back and forth, but there are also he's also made movies where people are going from point A to point B. But yeah, like but whether you're going in circles or going from point A to point B, I think the effect is still there.
And it's such a challenging thing to do well, which I think is one of the reasons this film works so well. Is it's a very risky move because there's not visually a whole lot going on. I mean, most of the time it's really just
Oh, I think it's
two
beautiful.
people. It is
I think it's a
beautiful. I
yeah, yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
But I think it's a very, very hard thing to do well, and it could very easily be put off track because it's mostly just shot, reverse shot inside of a car. And there's really only a couple of actors in this film. And so much of this film depends on extremely well written dialogue and just an extremely compelling story, which is a very hard thing to do, especially with a topic as intense as this one. And even when you watch it, you don't actually know that he's going to commit suicide until probably about like 30 or 45 minutes into the film. You get a pretty good distance before you actually know what's going on. He likes
And
to
you never know the reason why.
know. And I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's very, very good. We just
Because
know,
some,
yeah.
yeah,
Continue. Sorry, no, sorry.
the thing about his suicide and these thoughts and emotions is it really doesn't matter why he's doing it.
Yeah, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? And Abbas recognizes that the reasons that we tell ourselves that we do things like this don't really matter and are arbitrary. Because the point of the matter is that this is a person who does not feel at one with the world, who feels lost
Yeah,
and feels
life is
the only
hard.
solution. Life can suck sometimes.
Life is hard.
And that's it. There's like no, it's not like he's in, and he even has these conversations with people. He's not in any sort of debt. He's not running away from someone. It's not some sort of family troubles. He just doesn't want to live anymore. It's just as simple as that. And that's somehow much more heartbreaking than if they would give a reason. I think giving reasons to why he would do something like this would feel very saccharine and artificial, as if you're just trying to give a reason. But instead, there's nothing, right? He's just like, I just want to
Yeah.
do this. And you're thrown into this situation, which is brilliant, not by following our main character and being explained like, oh, here's this guy, he's got these problems, blah blah blah, but rather we feel as if we are a passenger, like the passengers he picks up. You kind of learn things as they learn things, and so it's disorienting a lot of the time through most of the film. I mean, you don't know where they're going, you don't know where they've been, and it's even more disorienting when you've never been to Iran before, as I never have. So I don't know like where they are or like I have any sense of direction or place, but they also almost never show where they're going, where they've been, because almost all of it is inside the car. So there's this sense of feeling lost, like you don't really know where you are in space or time. The only place you really know is where the grave is.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, you're right. That's pretty much just where when you like, cause yeah, like the grave is signified by like the tree by the side of the
Mm-hmm.
road. So when they arrive at it, because like you've had been there before. But yeah, other than that, like location wise, he goes to a bunch of different places. At one point he's in the city and then he leaves it at the very beginning where he like encounters all the laborers and stuff and they're asking for work. And the movie is very awkward because he kind of has to like ask these guys like, to do this thing for him. And this might be an inappropriate reading, but it kind of, when he's driving around like trying to like find dudes to like help him, there's kind of like a cruising aspect to it,
Yeah.
kind of like a homoerotic quality to it. I don't think that's like really like baked in the movie or anything like that. Like I don't think Kiarostami was thinking that at all. But I couldn't help but like certain like dialogue and stuff like that. I couldn't help but like,
Yes. It was the first thing I thought. Like before I knew this was
yeah,
the direction, I thought he was trying to,
really, you like, yeah, you thought that right away. Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
I thought he was trying to pay someone to,
like a man to have sex with him, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, that might be an inappropriate reading. I don't know, but
Sure.
that's what I even watching it the second time. Of course, I know what happens, but even then, I was still like making those connections. But whatever, it's fine. But yeah, it's like awkward. He doesn't know how to like ask people to do it, and he's trying to find the right guy, and then he keeps not finding the right person to do it over and over again, and it gets really awkward and in a kind of in a pretty realistic way, I would say.
Sure. There's something Sisyphinian, Sisyphus-like in the task, partly because he himself feels as if he's committing a sin, as if, and there's something very religious about this film. And I don't necessarily mean because most of the characters in this film are Muslim or anything like that, but as if committing this crime is a crime, quote unquote, of completing suicide is somehow sinful, not because of any particular religion, but just something spiritual about it. And so he himself refuses to tell people the task until he actually takes them to the spot because he feels as if he is sinning and what he's doing is wrong. And so the people he picks up also feel that, although it does feel a little terrifying as a viewer when he picks someone up, which the first person he successfully picks up is the officer, sergeant, not military person. They're in the
He's
military.
like a kid, yeah. It's like
He's
a
a kid. He's like 19
teenager.
years old.
Yeah.
It's like a teenager who has to join the military. He was drafted into the military. And there's something a little terrifying about that because not only does he not tell him where they're going,
Oh
but he
yeah, it's
doesn't
kind
tell
of
him
like
what he's doing.
it's like horror film like or something like that. Oh, I will say, you say that he feels guilty about it. I don't think he does feel like it's a sin, because later in the movie, just to touchly brief on it, of course he talks to the monastery student, and the monastery student is like, killing yourself is a sin, just straight up, and he's kind of like, I didn't want to hear a lecture. Like, I kind of know it's a sin, but like also being unhappy is a sin too, and I'm so unhappy that I think it cancels out, the sin of killing myself. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know. I think either interpretation can be like read that way. He probably, who knows what he feels, in terms of like whether he feels
Sure.
guilty or upset or sad, or, he's obviously later on in the movie we'll talk about how when he realizes it's going to happen, when he realizes that's coming together. But yeah, anyway, yeah, like I said, like the scene with the young military kid is the movie's like kind of funny too. It has a funniness to it that I like.
Yeah, there's a sense of genuine awkwardness, as if you were picking these people up. I mean, they don't feel like these are, even though of course they are, professional actors performing a piece.
I feel like the only professional actor is the main character in this movie.
You think so?
I think Kiarostami likes to use non-actors a lot of the
Right.
time, especially in these like earlier movies.
Yeah, I mean that would make sense. And they're just sort of conversations and kind of just follow because I know he kind of likes to mix documentary style filmmaking with
Right.
narrative, and of course Close Up is his most famous example of that, but they all kind of have that.
Non-actors, yeah.
Yeah, he's a big fan of the Italian neorealists and their opportunities to use non-actors in professional roles, which probably is the case here. But even so, there is this sense of kind of awkwardness just in everyone
Yeah.
involved because it's a weird, awkward
Well,
situation. I mean,
it's a weird thing to have to ask for, yeah.
the first thing he does is pick up that active military teenager, and they have a long conversation, and you can tell like the teenager is very uncomfortable, like almost immediately. He like almost immediately regrets it 'cause he's just like, I want to go to the barracks and go back to
Yeah, like,
work.
yeah, it's yeah.
And he's kind of conned into going somewhere else, and he doesn't really know what to do because if you're trapped in a car, like what what are you supposed to
Yeah.
do?
I kind of like how that conversation goes where like they're in the car and they're driving, and what's his name? Bobby, I think the main character's name.
I think so.
I,
Yes.
I think that's yes, Mr. Body.
Body.
Yeah, Body, he like he's in the car with the kid and he kind of like basically gets the kid's life story. And then I just like when they get to the hole and he's like, I really need you to do this for me and I will give you a lot of money. And the kid kind of refuses. Mr. Body like doesn't give up and he kind of like uses like he tries to attempt to like use like the kid's like history to be like, oh well, you said you needed money, da 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 da, and you're from Kurdistan, like Kurds like they're strong, like you got to do
Yeah.
like I just love how like that I don't know, I just like how clear his attempts to get him to do this thing, how desperate he is to try to get someone to do it for him.
He's very persuading. I would argue almost a bit manipulative in the
Yeah,
people he talks
he's
to.
cool. Yeah, he's like a really smart
He's a
guy.
smooth
Yeah.
talker.
Yeah.
He's very smart. And everyone he talks to, he like grabs parts of their lives and justifies like why they should be doing this thing. You know, the 10,000 tomans for every spade full of dirt or what have you.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost as if he's convincing himself that he's doing the right thing, like by trying to convince these people that he's the one that really needs to be convinced.
Yeah.
And of course, the teenager is scared out of his mind. Like
He
he's
doesn't, yeah.
terrified.
Yeah, he like runs away. That's really funny when he runs away.
That's a great moment.
That's just funny. That's just funny as hell. I love like the look of the Iranian countryside, by the way. I think it looks
That's
beautiful.
great.
That's just a location where it's like like a Kurosami movies, like they're all like that. They all look, it's like beautiful like footage of like the Iranian villages and countrysides, and kind of makes me mad just because like I just feel like in the United States when you ask a person like imagine what Iran looks like, they'll think of like a desert. You know what I mean? Like they'll think of just some
Yeah.
place like completely different. And I think just like our like I just think that like we've like failed to like I don't know like show how because like Iran is like an enemy of some sort, it's like
Sure.
they live in like a destitute desert land or something like that. Not that like any country is perfect, but yeah, like Kurostami, like it looks like amazing. It looks beautiful. It looks so cool, and so yeah, it's just kind of like thank God, we have like movies like this made by like great filmmakers that can kind of really show off like the nature of their home country.
Yeah. It's almost feels like cheating because just has these beautiful locations that he gets to capture and make look wonderful. And it's certainly for someone who's never been to Iran or seen Iran, it's a great way to capture what Iran can look like. And it's not just, as you say, a giant desert. It's kind of like when people come to Reno here for the first time, they think we live in this like really desolate desert. But if you've ever actually been to Reno before, you know that it's what's called a high desert. So it's like super green. There's grass everywhere. There's a bunch of like beautiful flowers and that kind of things. Obviously, a very different scenario than Iran.
Yeah, Taste Cherry is pretty dusty, of course, like because he's kind of like up in like the hills and like hilly areas that are very rocky, and he even goes into like a couple like I don't know like factory areas and stuff like that that look pretty like dusty and kind of and dirty and stuff like that. But then once again it's like there's just grass and trees and stuff like that. So I would say like other movies too that he's made are even more green, even more and more forests and trees and stuff like that as well.
And one of my favorite moments in this film is after the teenager runs away. He's driving around and maneuvering through construction sites and these sort of things. And he meets with the security guard.
Yeah.
That conversation is amazing because
Yeah, it's great.
there's all these like really wonderful long takes in the film, and
Yeah,
this is one of
like
the best ones, and some great sound design too, where we just watch Body sort of just walk back and forth like outside of the glass while the security guard is
yeah.
inside the glass.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It's amazing. It just pans back and forth and you just see him like moving around, and there's just so much like detailed blocking that just works perfectly, and the way he moves in every moment and just kind of how he goes back and forth and what he's looking at, it's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of long takes especially, yeah. And the long takes using, nothing like it's not like a player type
Yeah.
long takes. It's just like it's typically like just two people talking is usually what the long takes consist of. And that's pretty much what Kiarostami movies are. It's just two people talking at a time. And They have a conversation, and I love it though because it'll either be like a really long take, like the one you mentioned, or they will do reverse shot, reverse shot. But even like the shot, reverse shot sequences, like I feel like they're really interesting too. The way that he kind of times them, he'll hold on people for like an uncomfortable amount of time, like longer than you would
Yeah,
normally hold on a person, like in a shot, reverse shot situation, like in the
yeah,
cars typically. So I think even the most boring editing, I don't know, way of even the most boring way of editing a conversation like that is still very interesting in a Kiarostami movie.
yeah, absolutely. He holds on these people for almost an uncomfortable amount of time. And you could describe most of the film that way because, of course, he did also edit this film on top of writing and directing it. And you can tell just how patient of a filmmaker is. And I think this is something that you can get away with in films of this length. I mean, this film's only like an hour, just a little over an hour and a half. This was like a 3 hour film. You really can't get away with it just because there's just so much. But with this, you're allowed to sort of sit in these moments and feel these moments, and it doesn't feel practice, right? I think part of the reason this editing works is because holding on these people for, as you put it, much longer than you typically would sort of allows the sense of being in the moment. Weirdly enough, you feel more present, even though things are moving slower. It just feels more like a natural conversation than sort of the classic Whittier back and forth, back and forth. And
I was just gonna say, like, it's a really exciting movie considering not that much happens, you know?
it's amazing how interesting a film like this can be. Again, just another amazing aspect of this film is there's no reason this film should be of interest. Like if you told the log line of this film to most people, they'd have no interest in watching it because it is mostly just a guy sitting in a car driving other people around. And that's pretty much it. And yet, despite that, it felt very hypnotic.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think that has something to do with the editing, just the way it works. I just couldn't move myself away. And we've watched a lot of films for this podcast, and there's been plenty where I get distracted or I get bored in moments, even movies I love. But this film, I just felt glued to the screen, like as if I'm being pulled in. And I think part of that is the way he edits and then also the conversations. But it's so strange that this works because this is just the kind of movie that you would think you don't really need to look at the screen because it is mostly conversations. I mean, obviously, I don't speak the native language, but if you speak the native language, you would think you wouldn't need to actually see it. And yet, the visuals in this film add so much, which is weird because it doesn't seem like a film where visuals would add much to the film itself because it is mostly just conversations. And yet, for whatever reason,
Very necessary, yeah.
I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know why the visuals are so necessary to this film because it doesn't seem like they need to be, and yet for some reason it just works.
Kiarostami also does the thing where like I've seen him do this too multiple times where he does the close up thing obviously very well, where there it's like two people like talking. Oh, and he'll break up that occasionally with like a really wide shot. He loves like really big wide shots, like to kind of like sort of I was gonna say like begin or cap off like scenes or something like that. And he kind of will do that, but also just like put them in randomly, like the car, like it'll be a conversation in the car, and then we'll suddenly be out of the car, and you'll see the car like maneuvering, the dirt roads and stuff like that. He'll look out the character, he'll look out to the distance and he'll see the military people like running a drill or running or something like that. I love his wide shots because things will be really far away. And it's clearly stuff that, he's directing. So it clearly shows like he's able to like direct really well when he's filming something really close up, but he's also really good at directing stuff that's really far away. And so yeah, I like when he goes back and forth in that. I think that also adds to like kind of like the excitement of the movie. Feels like you're there.
It does. And those wide shots, it's not just B-roll, which I think is a very typical classic thing to do, and there's nothing wrong with that, which is
Here's
of
the building,
course
and now we're inside the building. Yeah.
right. Here's the building, here's the outside, here's the city, here's whatever. It's used in all kinds of films. It's a very common practice, and you just go out and you get a bunch of footage, and then whenever you need to cut out of the car, you cut to that. And yet in this film, whenever they cut to those wide shots, it's never B-roll. Like it feels like it's very much he sat down and was like, at this moment, we're gonna cut to a wide. and here's exactly what the wide's going to be. And of course, you see that at the end of the film with the military marching and stuff like that. But that is just such a nuanced and detailed thing that you would never
Yeah, it's
really think about,
crazy.
because it would be so easy to just shoot the whole thing from a shot reverse shot, right? Do their whole conversation and then go back and just grab some wides of them driving around and then just cut them in whenever. And yet in this film, they are so meticulously thought out that it's very clear that this isn't B-roll. Like he specifically said, at this moment, we're going to cut to a wide, and here's exactly what the wide's going to be. And it's perfect. It's spectacular.
Yeah, there's something kind of transcendental about it, the way he kind of like the other thing too is that like this movie in particular, this movie and other movies that he's made, like he doesn't really have any like explosive emotion. All of his movies contain a very quiet dignity. There's some Kiarostami movies I've seen that will have maybe like crying or screaming or something like that, but it's like appropriate, it makes sense in like the reality of the situation. But especially like with the main characters, I guess like everyone has like a very quiet dignity, and there's no big explosive emotion. And even when the main character gets angry, he doesn't sound too angry, you know. I watched like a bonus feature of like a Kiarostami interview on Criterion, and my impression is that I think he thinks that like big explosive emotional moments from actors is almost kind of like cheating. It's kind of like manipulative, or like it's kind of holding the viewer hostage, I think is what he described it as. That and like I think yeah, I think he said like he just doesn't like movies that like in the moment they give you this crazy emotional kind of insane like kind of experience, but then you end up kind of forgetting it, and kind of feeling like you were cheated is what he described it as. And he said that he would rather watch a movie that would make you sleep than a movie that keeps you up.
That's a fascinating view of film and actors. And you see it in this film, not so much wanting to fall asleep watching this film. I've never seen one of his films and felt that way. But what's sometimes so haunting about this is that Body, and most of the people in this film, almost everyone really, is so calm about this fundamentally horrifying and terrifying situation. I mean, it just at its core, it is something evil, and yet Body and everyone involved in it is just so
There's a dignity.
not relaxed. Though there's a dignity, there's a certain respect to it, but still there's like this anxiety behind it. And of course there's sort of these big moments after he realizes that someone's actually going to do it, and that's very intense. But even with these conversations with people, even though there's kind of these silly moments where you see like the teenager run away or the arguments with the religious leader or these sort of things, despite all that, there's this calmness underneath it, which in another director's hand would be very different. I mean, another director's hands needs to be very big, right? Very emotional, a lot of crying and yelling and screaming. And yet here, despite the fact that is so simple in so many ways, to also layer on top of that the calmness of all the actors is not an easy thing to do.
The content itself is good enough, you know, like in terms of eliciting some kind of emotional or moving response from the viewer. You know, the only person that I guess like gets kind of like upset is the old man, the taxidermist, which is great. I like that. You don't even like see how he met him.
That's such a interesting cut.
The crazy decision, yeah.
I can't remember. It's after the religious leader left, and it just cuts to him like already in it. Like it's so, again, it's so disorienting, especially because this whole film, like most of the time, most of the film is just watching him like drive around trying to get someone into his
Run into
car.
somebody to help him, yeah.
And so to cut to that person, and the decision already decided too. It's not even like he's trying to convince them and then he like agrees to do it. Like that's even more disorienting because he's not even cutting to like he's already in the car and now we're gonna go through the
No,
whole
he's
thing and
already
try and
he's
do it.
already
It's
given his spiel
already
to him.
convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah. Such a strange move.
And the story with the old man is another thing in the movie that kind of demonstrates how hard life is, you know, like he spends like several minutes and Body doesn't say anything. He spends several minutes trying to convince him to not do it, to like not kill himself. And he's like, oh, a sunset or fruit, or, what about, I tried to kill myself one time. But then I realized, like, wow, like the world and everything is so beautiful. Like, why would I want to like cut that short? The movie, it takes several minutes of him like talking. But then when it comes down to it, he's like, well, will you do it? And he's like, yes, I need the money because my granddaughter's sick. And it's just like, fuck. Sucks.
It is such a challenging moment because here's this really grand moment of love and generosity. And he talks about the taxidermist talks about this moment where he goes to hang himself and he's at a mulberry tree. And right before he does it, he tastes a mulberry and, of course, taste of cherry. This is where this whole thing comes into play. And it's the sweetest thing he's ever tasted. And he sees the sunrise and he realized how wonderful life is and how amazing it is. And you would think at this moment, another great thing is he doesn't play like the swelling music. There's no like big speech. There's no big epiphany here. And that's what makes this moment so terrifying and challenging is he gives the classic big speech that every movie of this type gives. The classic, I did all the things and here I am. And instead of the reaction of, I want to live, I want to be alive, it's just, will you do it, as you put it, right? He's just
He's completely
so set.
unconvinced by
He's
by
unconvinced.
anyone. The only thing that convinces well, and I guess it's worth saying, like, we haven't really said, like, the reason why he wants to pick up these guys and what he's asking them to do is that he's going to take a bunch of sleeping pills tonight. He's going to go into the hole by the tree, and then this guy is going to come, whoever he's paying is going to come into the hole and call for him. And if he's still awake, pull him out. And if he's not, throw dirt on him. Just bury him by the tree. He wants to, I guess, he can't bury himself, if he dies. So he needs someone to do it. I guess the only thing that really maybe convinces him to not do it, almost does, I guess, is basically right after he realized, like, okay, it's gonna happen. Like after he drops him off at the museum.
Which is such an intense moment in this
Yeah.
film. For a film that's so calm, he's driving away and like this sense of anxiety just like hits him. And all of this comes through his eyes. Like there's really no big emotions here, which is so incredible. I mean, such skill in acting that has to be required to do
That
this
guy's a
kind of
real
thing.
actor. Like if you look, he's been in like a lot of movies.
That makes sense because he gives an incredible performance here, and you can see it in his eyes that like suddenly it just hits him, and he goes back and he's running around and he tries to find the taxidermist, and he finds the taxidermist, and you can tell like at this moment like he's questioning everything. And what's amazing is that that conversation, the taxidermist comes out, and like the taxidermist is it's over. Like it's done with. Like he doesn't try to convince him again. Like he's given up almost on him. Like it seems as if at this moment, Body is seeking a reason to live, right? He wants to be convinced at this moment for the first time in the entire film. He's not trying to convince someone. He is seeking to be convinced to live.
And it just looks like he's looking at the world differently too, right? Like you can also see that like he like looks down and he sees like the children playing in that amazing wide shot, and he like takes a picture of like the couple. They ask him to take a picture and he takes a photo. I don't know. It just seems like he's like he's literally looking at the world as if it's the last time he's going to see it. So he's kind of like looking at everything differently. And I think the movie, without even really like changing all that much, it's still able somehow to change. It's still able to feel different, because the character has changed and he's able to see things differently, even though the movie itself hasn't changed all that much. You know what I mean? Like it hasn't, like, the color or the lighting or anything hasn't really changed all that much. It still looks the same, but it feels different.
It most certainly does. And I think part of that has to do with the editing. There's something sort of manic about the editing in this last portion of the film. It's moving a lot faster. There's a lot of faster movements, and it just feels like everything's moving at this pace that never has before, as if everything's brighter than it was. And I think part of it too is he goes to a place where instead of the typical kind of yellows and oranges most of this film, he's at that museum, which is like super white and bright, and
Yeah, it's got like flowers and stuff.
something to be said about the metaphor of him going to this place that's completely bright and white.
There's like kids there, like more people. Yeah.
Yeah, his performance, he's acting as if, as you say, he's seeing the world in this whole different light.
I didn't think about it too. He interacts with one woman too in the entire movie, and it's the woman who has to take their picture at the museum. It's like the one woman in the movie.
It's interesting. I never thought about that. But then even after he has this sort of epiphany, he still drives back to the grave.
The movie takes its time at the end too, where like, yeah, he's at this apartment and I think he takes a taxi right to the grave and it's like storming and stuff. And it really takes a long time, for him to like get in there.
Everything after that conversation with the taxidermist, I mean, after he sees the world for the last time and moves at this almost painful pace where you know what's going to happen. Like, you know, he's still going to make this decision. And yet he kind of moves through life as if it's sort of in slow motion and watching him walk through his apartment. And there's no dialogue for quite a bit. Like, I don't think there's any dialogue for the rest of the film. And he's just walking around his apartment and he's just doing all the things to prepare for those final moments. And they're just so quiet and patient. And that is really hard to watch because you're basically watching a man go to his death and you feel as a viewer hopeless. Like there's nothing you can do. You want to reach out and try to help him and try to do something. And what's terrifying about those last moments is it's not some big dramatic thing. It's just body,
It just is what it is.
just is what it is.
And of course it kind of, I guess you don't really know if he dies or not. I don't know how you would, if he did take a bunch of sleeping pills, which we don't see him do, but maybe he probably did. I don't know how you would survive that. Maybe you just didn't take enough, like it's like a lot of Kiarostami movies. They end very, you don't know. Because it doesn't really like matter, right? Like the soul, like in a lot of Kiarostami movies, there's like a goal or a thing that the protagonist is trying to do, and right before they do it or right before they don't do it, the movie ends and you don't really know what happens. It doesn't really matter in these movies, especially whether or not it does or doesn't happen. It's really just about kind of like the journey getting there and just kind of, the meaning of life, is embedded a lot too in this movie and others as well. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, those final moments are quite intriguing because he lays down in the grave, which is the only time you see the grave, by the way. They hide almost the whole film.
Yeah, that's true. You never see it until then.
And it's this flashing light of lightning and the thunder and the rain and all of this. And then we cut to like the movie's officially over, right? Like
Ending of the movie is very baffling. It's like because it's just kind of like,
what's
okay,
your
like
explanation of that ending?
I think Kiarostami just like really likes breaking like this barriers, I guess, of like making movies, And I think it's just kind of him having fun. Like I really don't think it's anything like all that like deep. I think he just really likes kind of demystifying like movies and making movies and stuff like that. And so he just like threw that in there. It's kind of weird, but I don't think I would have it any other way, even though it is kind of baffling when you first see it.
It's an incredibly baffling moment because we watch this man possibly complete suicide. We don't know. And then we cut to it's the middle of the day. The actor who plays Body
He's like walking around.
walking around. He like smokes a cigarette. We see our director and our film crew talking to each other, and they're talking to like the extras who are playing the active military. And it's such a strange fourth wall break. Like it's not only like a break of looking into the camera, but it's like this is all a movie. This is all make believe. And I think there's something really interesting about that. And like you said, I agree. There really is no other way that you could end this film. I think there might be a little bit more than him having fun here. I mean, he is having fun and he does love to kind of break that. But I think it's also, and maybe I'm reading into something that isn't here, which is certainly possible. But I think it's also this idea of we tell ourselves the story of what life is. We tell ourselves the story of who we are as a person, but that story is just a story. It's not who we actually are. So just like Body tells himself a story of who he is and why he has to kill himself, it's a movie, but we're all also sort of creating this fantasy of how our life must be, of how we must do things. And I think what's being suggested here is that if we can just step out of that, if we can recognize that this is a fantasy that we're telling ourselves, that these ideas and this sort of cognitive dissonance that we have in our mind, that we have to live this way, we have to do this thing that isn't real. And if we can step out of that, we can sort of live a happier life. Like if we can recognize that we have spent our lives telling ourselves a story of who we are and who these people are and who that person is. If we can step out of that and recognize that life just kind of is, and we're constantly telling ourselves these different stories, then we can change the story and maybe not end up like Body.
I see where you're coming from. In that Kiarostami interview on Criterion, another thing he says that he doesn't like in movies is when people give advice. I see where you're coming from, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But I guess with Kiarostami's movies, I guess I'm trying to avoid this idea that he's trying to impart some kind of like advice or way of life or way of living or an idea of like how a person should live.
Well, that's the movie, Andrew.
Yeah, that's the movie, pretty much.
Would you like to give your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's the best Kiarostami movie that I've seen so far. I mean, it's just kind of beautifully photographed movie of Iran, and it's just I just really love a good Kiarostami movie. They have such a beautiful, gentle, kind of quiet, patient dignity that I think like most movies just can't do like at all. I think most movies, especially American movies, are like wild and crazy, which I like, but I think there is really something to just like watching a movie that is just like beautifully written, beautifully directed, purposefully edited, and it has like a great idea behind it. And it is just executed, in a way that isn't too obvious. It's like very like surprising, but in a very like simplistic kind of way. And Taste of Cherry, it's just like a moving, beautiful thing that I think anyone can kind of connect with. Definitely a 9 out of 10 for sure.
Yeah, there's certainly something very dignified about this film. The sense of respect and calmness, but also curiosity. It's so hypnotizing to watch this film and be part of this experience. And I couldn't help leaving the film just caught in the different moments of this film. And even though, unlike a lot of big filmmakers, there's no like moment to grab onto, there's nothing sort of like the Touch of Evil, the player sort of opening scene sort of thing where like you can grab like this moment, remember this moment. What's amazing about this film is despite the fact that no individual moment is really all that memorable, the film as a whole, the feelings that you experience stay with you in a strange way that so many other films don't. So I too am going to give this film a 9 out of 10.
It's a great movie.
All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. You can find everything I do at Austin Lugo12.
I'm on Letterbox at Retro Andrew, RETR0 Andrew.
And you can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts. You can also find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Life Through Fiction or With Nothing to Say. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.